whatever we do, if we have to change the timeline, or whatever example you use, it's always going to be,
It's always going to be episode blank anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
And roll in the intro music as well.
Better believe it. That's the next thing. We have to fucking get that sorted. I think we do kind of have intro music, but we kind of don't either.
It's deadly as well, though. It's deadly, especially when it comes up, when it catches me by surprise. Like, say, when I'm on your Instagram and then on your story, and then part one of the podcast comes up, and I'm like, yeah, because like that's my intro music as well. Do you know what I mean?
You want some cretin to fucking actually talk over it, though. And now, do himself.
That's it. But just as that's coming in that way, and then we're coming in that way, then nice bit of schlick.
Exactly. Right into our fucking. We'll fucking get rocking and rolling here, shall we? So,
sure.
Chefs. We are live, we are going, and what I want to do here is first off outline that you are listening and watching the Chef Fit podcast. Episode 67, what we are talking about in today's episode is really something that me and Peter have dealt with personally quite a lot of, but really it's rife within the industry, and that's shit bosses and toxic colleagues or toxic people that you work with. That's today's episode. And
hot topic.
Something I fucking feel strongly about, because I think as I've gotten older, my tolerance for fucking morons has decreased massively. Yeah, decreased massively. And I'm quite grateful for the position I've able to get myself into, that I don't have to deal with a lot of these work situations that chefs can find themselves in. You know what I mean? But I've definitely dealt with it so many times that you kind of know what you're willing to accept, what you're not willing to accept. So yeah, shit bosses and toxic fucking work environments and toxic colleagues, that's a fucking massive one. Anyway, before we get into that shit, Petey, crack it, my man. What's happening, all right?
All good.
What is the news from yourself in the past while? How are we settling in after we've kind of gotten past the honeymoon period, finished lockdown, back to work, fully in the mix, living the dream?
Yeah, I mean, I miss lockdown, serious. But just waiting for the gyms to open back up, and then we were rocking. I think my foot's getting there.
Yeah.
With my foot, plantar fasciitis the last couple of weeks, and getting over that slowly but surely.
It's just been fucking. Is that eased off at all, or is it a constant thing? Like, how does it work? I've never even gotten it before.
It's sore in the morning. It hurts to walk down the stairs, and then by the time I get off the bike and work, the pain's gone away. And then by about halfway through service, so about 1 o'clock, 1:15, it comes back again, and then doesn't stop until I get home and get off my foot proper. Because there's no like rest or sit down time and work, like, you know what I mean, you're on your feet all the time. It's go. And then it's annoying me. Like, so today's workout, we had the side RDLs, the Bulgarian squats, the split squats. We had the banded good mornings. What else did we have? The RDLs. That's all fine. And then I get down to the last superset, and it's got burpees and jumping squats, jump squats, and I can't go near them because I can't walk for too long. Never mind jump up and down on the foot. So when it just gets things, it's just annoying. You know that way. That's all.
What causes it in the first place? In your mind, because that's what happened.
Inflammation of the plantar fascia. That's what it is. If it tears, it's gone, and you have to get operated on. So luckily, that's not what's after happening. It's just inflammation of the plantar fascia. So I'm sure you know this, but for those who don't, if your foot's here, I have my hand up, the heel of your foot is where this tendon starts, and then it goes up and goes through up to your toes like that. And it's a big long yoke. And if you have flat feet or fallen arches, you get it all the time. And then even if you don't, it can just happen. And when it goes. It could take 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 months, or 2 years for the pain to go away, or else it won't go away. If it won't go away, that means it's torn. You need to get operated on. But luckily, I was nowhere near that. Thank fuck. So take Difene, and then keep it on. The doctor said keep the cast on as much as possible, but walking around that cast is a pain in the hole. So if I'm sitting down playing FIFA, I'll stick it on for a few hours, and then it's just really tight compression from above the ankle all the way down, and that does wonders. When I take it off, it feels like my foot is floating up into the air.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That works really, really well for it. But other than that, you just have to wait it out.
So the problem is, how often do you get a fucking opportunity, do you know what I mean, to actually wrap it up and put it up? Because it's fucking half the day you're spending on work. And
yeah, maybe twice in a week I was like, right, I'm definitely going to be sitting down for a few hours, so I'll put it up now.
Fuck me, man. Pain in the hole. Setback. Seems like the fucking story of the year. Do you know what I mean? Anytime it was
I think it's because of the just not being training hard enough, you know?
The body starts
that's what
breaking
I think.
down.
Yeah. Like like I remember. I'm not saying this like it was years ago, but like when I'm going to the gym 3 times a week and running all the time, and I have the routine of the park run, I have my rest day on Sunday, active recovery day even on the Sunday. I remember going months and months without getting injured or without having a niggle or anything like that. It's just your body and mind is steeled, and there's nothing that can.
Momentum works both ways. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think momentum works both ways. And it was the same thing. Like, even when we went back into the gym, I was fucking doing twice as much. And it's not as if we weren't training. Like, I was definitely training at home. I didn't miss sessions. I was definitely doing my runs and whatnot. But if I was to compare the amount of exercise and all the things I was doing, you know what I mean, before lockdown happened, you think that, oh, fuck, well, I'm doing more, so therefore I'm going to be breaking down more. The reality of the situation was, once gyms were back open, we were in there every day. Not only for the fact that I haven't been in a fucking gym in a while and I'm so sick of doing burpees at home that I was like, fuck, just get me in there every day, because I like the escape of going in, training hard. It's a different environment. And it's like, even doubled the fucking workload, and I felt felt fucking great. I think there is a lot to be said. There's intangible things, and intangible is like something you can't really like see or grab at. Do you know what I mean? But they exist. So like, the intangible is that, fuck, well, the fact that you're kind of on the back foot doing shit at home, or you don't have access to all the things you regularly would be, or maybe you're out of fucking routine, whatever combination of all of that shit, you just you end up tripping up more often than if you were going full bore with every tool that you had. It's a weird one. It's really fucking weird. And I get like multiple times I've had shit similar to yourself, you know, whether it's my back going, or, you know what I mean, something fucking happening. You're like, what the heck? That doesn't happen regularly. And now I've got 3 of those things happening within fucking 2 weeks of each other. Like, I think my shoulder went, my back went, and my fucking ankle went within the first 3 weeks of fucking lockdown or something like that. You know what I mean?
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, fucking what the fuck? What's actually going on? Anyway.
I do have to say though, the restorative yoga is great when like the targeted recovery. They did like just this one here of putting the hand out in front, and then your thumb up into the palm, push that forward, and then just bringing your hand up, and then doing that for a while as part of it was excellent, especially for the wrist here and here, where I was focusing on the wrist for that yoga session. It was like 25-minute job, and when I went like that, so I've started doing this now. For listeners, by the way, he's gripping his hand. He's putting his arm straight out in front, and he's gripping the palm of his hand, right? And he's literally pull the hand down, pulling the hand down so it's stretching the front of his wrist, and then keeping his arm straightened up overhead. Which is if you think about, like, you know, if you're say 20 fucking years of gripping a knife and prepping at the same thing, or gripping pans and all of those things, what you're really doing is like that grip, and then turning your wrist up, the amount of tension in the elbow joint. That's why a lot of chefs can get fucking not only carpal tunnel syndrome, but even tennis elbow, you know, where like the tendon in the fucking elbow is like literally overused and gets quite fucked up. And I think things like that, I didn't even realize how bad mine was until I started focusing on the yoga, and a lot of the yoga poses were forcing me to put my hand flat on the fucking mat. And like, let's say I'm doing, define the fucking movement, whatever, like a lizard
pose, or a lizard position is what it's called, where you're trying to stretch out your hips, but you have to put your hands on the ground and get your chest up and your shoulders down. So you have to flatten your hand against the ground. And my wrists are like fucking super tight when I started off, and it was really uncomfortable. But then slowly but surely over time, it's like now I'm able to get my hand flat again, and I'm able to support my shoulder properly. And it makes such a fucking massive difference. All these small things, you wouldn't even think that it does make a difference, but it makes such a huge difference. So yeah, big time, man. Small things like that with the yoga.
When I'm cycling as well, I do loads of stretching when I'm on the bike. I do curls all the time when I'm cycling. Whenever I get a chance, I sit up and do curls like that.
Yeah.
And then backwards out that way as well. Because when you're leaning forward like that, your elbows will be killing you, your shoulders will be killing you, your shoulders are packed in the whole time. Did 115k a couple of days ago, and every 4 or 5k sit up, get the arms curled up, up this way, and then back down out that way, and makes the world of difference.
It's the same thing when I did that half marathon. It was the same thing. My shoulder, I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's like my shoulders and my chest get super tight on each end. So I literally found myself running, like shaking my arms out and just running with my arms straight. I look like a fucking deranged lunatic now, but like literally had to stop that. And I think it's just spending so much time in that fucking like hunched over position, tightening up my arms and my shoulders. You just get outrageously tight. But yeah, same thing with the yoga, man. Small little places that start to get flexible that I didn't know I had flexibility in, but it takes a lot of pain off and makes things a lot easier.
It's brilliant.
You know? So I suppose with today's topic, folks, like this is a massive thing that I feel that a lot of people need more awareness in. I feel that with work environments, bosses, people we work with, the situations we find ourselves in professionally, that we don't necessarily question it enough. And I think within the industry, because chefs have a tendency to be so loyal, and for whatever mixture of reasons, maybe you know the person personally who you work with, who you work for, maybe they've taken care of you in the past, or you think, quote unquote, that they've taken care of you when they haven't.
Tricked into thinking that you're tricked to being loyal.
I think that's a massive one. I think that's a really big one. It's like, oh yeah, they take care of me, but they're not actually taking care of you, and we'll explain why now in a sec. But you find yourself in a work situation that doesn't really work for you in any way, shape, or form, yet you give everything to it. Okay, that's a situation I see a lot of chefs in. And ultimately, the result of that is just general unhappiness. Like, and not only unhappiness, but resentment and anger that doesn't get dealt with and just kind of bubbles under the surface. The other thing then is actually the people you work with. And I've been part of places like that before where, you know, it can really, really fuck with you. You know what I mean? And people don't realize how much it fucks with them until they leave. I think a negative or a toxic work environment is a bit like Stockholm syndrome. You don't actually see how bad it is until you're outside it. And then you look and you go, what the fuck was I doing? You know? So we'll give you examples like that. And ultimately what I want you to take away from this episode and what we're about to speak about is getting to a point where whatever sacrifices you make, if you're going to make sacrifices in your career, if you're cooking or whatever the fuck you're doing, like the sacrifice has to benefit you. And ultimately the end goal is to get yourself into a desirable position where you either, it depends on the person. Like, I'm not here to tell anyone what they should desire within their career, but ultimately you don't want to have the fucking piss ripped out of you. That's number one. You know, if you're going to work, you should be getting paid to work, not just expected to fucking go above and beyond. And ultimately, I want you to get to a stage at the end of this where you're able to question where you're at and identify, is it a good place for you to be or is it not a good place for you to be? And if it's not a good place to be, then what do you do to ensure that you do have somewhere good? You know, and that you're in an environment that actually is sustainable for you and doesn't make you lose your fucking mind. I think within this industry, I don't want to be super negative about things. Do you know what I mean? But the truth of the situation is, and I know there's a lot of people probably, you know I get some flack over this, and it's because I talk about what is actually true and what I see I think a lot of people, or maybe colleagues who do similar things to what Chef Fit do, or whether it's coaching or whether it's mental health advocacy or whatever the fuck, I think everyone tries to paint this great picture as if everything's fucking like, it's just about, talking about our mental health and it's about this and that. In my opinion, I think there's a lot of shit in the industry and that there's a lot of people that potentially need to be dealt with or that need to be seen for what they are, which is, there's either a lot of ego, there's a lot of fucking weird shit going on. So it's very easy to get tangled up within that at some point along the line. And you've got to be able to fucking identify when you're stuck in that shit, and you got to be able to pull yourself out of it and identify what's going to be good for you. Like I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago in a restaurant I was working in, it was a case of, my family was involved in it and my brother was a shareholder in the place. So there was a massive degree of loyalty involved when I was working there, but he wasn't the only shareholder there. And there was a lot of fucking weird shit going on. And ultimately, in a very short amount of time, that went from being an exciting new place to be to a fucking hellhole. You know what I mean? Where it was just us versus them. There was a lot of hearsay and whispers going on behind our backs. And basically the people we were, working with, who were supposed to be in business with, were also the ones who were seeking to find any way to stab us in the back. It was a really horrible environment to be in because every day you're looking over your shoulder, you're fucking looking at what that person's doing. That person's a dickhead. They don't know what they're at. Like there's so much of that going on. And when you're in it, human beings are naturally drawn towards that drama or that gossip and whatever fucking else. But along the line, after months and months and months of that, like I realized I was in a very, very toxic place that was robbing a lot of my headspace. And I would find myself coming home every night and speaking with my brother because we lived together, and all we would do is just talk about how fucking bad shit was in work, or not even how bad our own situations were, but more discussing this toxic situation we found ourselves in. And I realized in that place and how much sacrifice I was making and putting into the thing to try and make it work, and how much I thought about how much I disliked the other people that were there. And it was such a fucking bad place. And, at the time you're giving it everything you have and you're not really questioning it. And I know for myself, it's like, well, I never questioned it, but on the outside of that, I was on minimum wage. I was doing fucking every hour under the sun, didn't have a fucking life outside of work really. Spent my days off asleep. Or fucking, drinking or whatever. And it's like, I had a terrible life outside of work, basically. And not once did I ever get to a point where I was like questioning. I didn't question it until I had no other option but to question it and get the fuck out. Because it's like, I can't take this anymore. You know what I mean? I actually can't take this anymore. And what I realized after I left that place is like, fuck me. The difference in my headspace when I went from being in such a toxic place, dealing with, toxic colleagues and just overall negativity, when I got out of that place, it was like taking off a fucking suit of armor. Like, Jesus Christ, I didn't even realize how bad that was until I was gone. And you gotta get into your mind that work should be something that you do, and you should be able to separate it from personal life a lot of times. You know what I mean? In the majority of cases, you should be able to separate it. And if you find yourself going to work and then outside of work, all you talk about is work, there's a problem there, So the problem is either you've got a massive fucking ego and you can't stop talking about yourself, which I've met many chefs who talk like that. You know what I mean? They always talk about work. Or you're just someone who's stuck in a place that is extremely toxic. You need the fuck out of there because it's not a good environment for you. And the question is why? Why is it a bad place? Or why is it a bad environment? And why should you not stay there? Well, the idea is that Jim Rohn said that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And what that ultimately means is spend your time with people who are inherently negative, and you're going to, basically it's going to rub off you in a negative way, or else you're going to replicate negative behavior. Hang around with fucking yogis for years on end. I guarantee you probably do yoga somewhere along the line. If you hang around with fit, healthy people, you're probably going to start being fit and healthy, because you got to understand that you're the sum of the people you're with. So if you're in a really toxic, negative environment, well, that is only going to lead to a toxic headspace, and ultimately you falling into that trap. So as a person, your responsibility, if you want to live a happy life, is to avoid that shit at all costs. At all costs. And we'd all do it. Well, if, in my opinion, I would do this in my own personal life. Like, friends. You have to be able to identify if friends are fucking toxic, because that'll also fuck you up. And I'd say we're probably we'd be more willing to sort that out than we would be willing to sort out a work situation. But the same thing applies all the fucking time. It's like the people and the places that you spend the most time in all of a sudden basically become you and your thought processes. So you got to understand that if you're in a bad place and you're working in a bad place, well, that only has negative implications for you. And that will fuck your life big time. And I feel that so many chefs end up in a place where they're sacrificing everything for a boss that doesn't really give a shit about them, and ultimately enduring a toxic environment on a day-to-day basis, because that's just kind of what you do, as opposed to it being bullshit, which it is bullshit. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. That's my own experience, and having gone through times of really being in shit places and didn't want to be there in the fucking slightest, and then coming out of it and realizing how bad that truly was. And you kind of make a vow to yourself not to do it again, but it's an easy trap to fall back into. And I did fall into another trap. So after I left and 2 years later, let's say I was in a fitness organization, right? And again, another example of toxic bosses. But you know, I would be in a place where, let's say, the people I worked for were good at what they did, but they would act in ways that would just bamboozle you. So it's like they would have no problem about going on the session in work, okay? In work. Like, whether it be doing cocaine, whether it be fucking drinking heavily, or whatever the fuck. If it's a Friday, last day of the week, that would actually be a common occurrence, a scary common occurrence, which is very, very rare in fitness. So let's say I would be peer pressured into getting involved with that, getting fucked up in the middle of the day on a Friday in work, because you could kind of get away with it. And then it's like, be expected to go down and coach people, right? So that would be a common occurrence. It's like, why the fuck aren't you doing it? You know what I mean? Come on, like, there's a line there, like that kind of shit. And then the next week I'd be getting like apprehended because I was slightly unprofessional on the floor of the place I was working when I was dealing with clients, because I was leaning against the fucking rack or something when I was looking at someone deadlift when I was coaching. And it's like
the same person on Friday, what?
The same person. And I'd be kind of sitting there going like, am I fucking losing my mind here? Like, am I the only one that thinks this is absolutely insane? It's actually insane what I'm seeing here. Like, you're peer pressuring me into doing drugs, right? And then, like, you don't see that as a problem, even though I'm coming face to face with clients, as are you. But the next week, then it's like, fuck, well, you know, you leaned against the rack there when you were trying to look at someone's technique. Like, what's that about? I was like, what do you mean, what's that about? Like, so massive double standards. And again, that was another example of me falling into this fucking trap of, yes, I was learning, and yes, that's the main reason that I was there, is to learn and get better. And it was my first step, you know, forward. But you definitely get to a point where it's like, okay, I've seen this pattern, this weird fucking toxic pattern happen over and over and over again. And it's like, I can't change that. So I need to get the fuck out, because I'm not going to keep tolerating. Like, that's, again, it's actual madness that'll drive you insane, because it's stuff like that will happen and you're like, what the fuck? Another example, right? Another example was a lad in Sheffield a couple of weeks ago. And he was telling me he's a fucking absolute legend of a bloke. Really, really good results. Has really pushed himself, focused his mind, and he's pulled himself out of a very dark period. You know what I mean? Like, was really just eating shit all day, drinking all the time, drugs, got himself to a point where he had no belief, no confidence in himself, looking in the mirror and totally embarrassed by what he's seeing. And he, during lockdown, started smashing out Sheffield, and he did it, lost fucking, he's still in the process, obviously, but lost a good amount of weight, totally changed his lifestyle, no more shit, no more vices, no more sugar, whatever, in a really good headspace, in a really good place. And as soon as he finished lockdown, he goes back to work. The first thing the guy says to him, the boss that he's working for, a big fat fuck, right, who obviously owns the place and makes everything about himself, he says, by next week, you're going to be back doing the same shit as you were before. You'll be back doing coke. You'll be back eating shit. You'll be back drinking every single night. You're wasting your time. That's what he said to him. That's what a boss said to a fucking, a chef who is younger than him, who works for him and believes everything that he says. And then gives him the ingredients to bake a cake. And the ingredients that he gave were fucking expired. And it's just like, if you were to look into that even more, you're like, okay, so you're giving someone a chef who's trying to make a lifestyle change. You ask him to make a cake because you just gave me ingredients. You said, you make that there, go for it. So you're literally trying to sabotage him. And then not only you try to practically sabotage him, you already told him he's going to be sabotaged. And then you give him ingredients that are probably expired and could make him sick, which is just, that's another level beyond being a dickhead. That's your shit. You're a terrible human. And it's like, fuck me. Those are there's so many examples like that. And what I realized,
I've got a million examples myself. I'm sure we all do.
Yeah.
Like in the last while, the last good few years, the shouting point is where I go, right, that's it, I'm done.
So
good. If what is enough to get you to scream at another person? Like, how often do you scream at somebody now? How often would you scream at somebody?
Yeah,
Never. So is a job worth doing that?
No.
Making you do that? If that's something that you don't do ever, but you do it in work, that's not the right place for you. So that screaming point is somewhere, I've learned that long ago to get out before I get there.
Yeah, totally.
When it gets to that point, that is not the place for you.
And the thing that you've got
I always find out that jobs with me, I stay in a job until I don't like it anymore, and then I fuck off. So 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and I'm gone. It's as simple as that. I don't stay in a place for 10 years. And, when people do stay in a place, and I'm like, when people start complaining about their job in Sheffield, I'm just saying, well, fucking leave.
What do you think led you to that mindset where you're like, okay, well, because I think that's an interesting one. And it's a mindset that you as a chef
was
probably only
gain. It was my first head chef job.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I just said, I'm not going to do that. I always thought, well, if I was head chef, I wouldn't do that. So when I got my first head chef job, which was probably about 10, 15 years ago, I was like, I'm not going to work like that.
And even that mentality towards work. And I know people are like, oh, he's that guy who walks out. But actually, try and fucking listen for a sec. Because this is the whole episode about unnecessary sacrifice. And it's like, who are you fucking killing yourself for? And it's your life. And you got to be able to look after your own life. So for you, Peter, like you've gotten to a point now where it's like, work is work and it's to pay the bills mentality, but you've also gotten to a point where you've paid your dues, you've done your fucking, the shifts of death, the years of weekends, bank holidays, late nights, all of that shit.
Every time.
You've paid your dues. So you've gotten to a point where it's like, right, if I don't like a place or it's not treating me well, I'm fucking out. And, you've got to, I think that's a strong mentality to have, because if you're not in a place that is serving you in some way, then why are you there? And I think that's a mentality that a lot of people will benefit from having, because it's being able to look at your situation and go, is this right? You know what I mean? Like, should I be here? Yes or no? And we need to be honest with ourselves when we ask that question. A lot of the times it's not, you know what I mean? Fuck, I probably should get out, but we don't. So I think that's quite cool that you're able to say, nah, you know what I mean? This isn't right for me. I'm out the gap. So
it's good. It's good in a way, that mentality, but it's it's also, it can be a little bit of a contradiction to my own standards of how I hold myself and how I should hold other people to me. So if a boss is annoying me, I leave
Mm-hmm.
instead of me sorting shit out, or because I know in my last job, for example, the boss was the two bosses. One of them, like the head chef, was very passive aggressive and openly aggressive as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when he started to scream and shout, like, so I'm not going to get into a screaming and shouting match. I'll stand there, deadpan face, and that will infuriate them more. I know it will, but that's just how I'm going to go into this confrontational situation. And I was like, no, because blah blah blah. And then, oh yeah, blah, blah. And I was like, nope, that's not what's going on here at all, And we into this thing where it's like, oh, you don't do this, and I said, no, I've done that and that and that. How do you think you are to decide when you've done enough? And I said, well, if you don't pull your weight, and then it's turned around. Now it didn't end up this way, but it turned around like I was being a troublemaker, right? Because nobody ever stood up to that boss before.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever he starts screaming and shouting, people just cower and do what he says and take it, or they just quit. So if I had to just quit, then the exact same thing is happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a question that I would have for you is, how do you deal with these confrontational dickheads without looking like you're being the trouble starter, when everybody else just walks away, quits the job, or just takes it and works miserably?
Yeah.
Or you can turn around them and say, no, hold on a second, you don't fucking speak to me like that. But then there's an argument, where before there wouldn't be an argument because the person wouldn't stand up to them.
Yeah, like you got to first understand that just because you're in a leadership position doesn't mean that you're a leader. Like, leadership is a choice. And what leadership is not screaming and shouting at people and intimidating people and using your power to get them to fucking kowtow to you. Like, that's not what a leader is. That's a weak leader. You got to understand that in places that you're working, that the leader is like that, the bottleneck is always at the top. The bottleneck is always at the top. All the problems usually stem from that person. I've worked for fucking many people that are like that they are the problem that they speak so much about. And then you're in a place, you've done that enough times to know when you're not going to tolerate it. So that's why you have zero tolerance on it. I would probably be somewhat similar. The way that you kind of deal with it is two ways. Number one is understanding that in the place that you're working, are you learning? Are you getting better? Or are you being well taken care of? You know what I mean? That's the first checklist. And if you're not learning, like I've taken abuse like that, where, you know what I mean, as I was used that example before, I wasn't treated well as an employee. Like any time there was time to say something negative, it got said to me. And there was a lot of shit going on like that. But at the same time, I was still getting a lot better. I was still learning, and I was still gaining invaluable experience during that time. So I was willing to take it for a certain period. Do you know what I mean? I was willing to take it for a certain period. And I remember one night I got screamed and shouted at for doing something while I was coaching. And it's like, I thought it was unreasonable. I thought it was unfair. But afterwards, I had to think to myself, it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of the new guy. I'm trying to get better here and trying to learn. So what is this person trying to tell me? As bad as they worded it, what are they trying to tell me? And I did that for a long enough period of time, and I did get better as a result of it. But you eventually get to a point, as the tolerance level starts getting less and less. And I think that's just what happens when you get older as well. You're not willing to tolerate fucking bullshit from people anymore.
I think that's what it is as well. I keep saying that. What I keep saying is I don't care, but it's just an analogy for how I feel about work, is that I don't care enough.
Yep.
I'm a very good worker. Yep. I hold myself to a very high standard. And the other thing I say is oh, you do care, blah, blah. I said, no, listen, I just don't want to get given out to it. That's all. And I decided a while ago as well that, I'm 38 years old. I'm not going to have anybody give out to me over a job.
No, fact. And I think, but going back to that, like, if you're learning somewhere and you're fucking getting a valuable experience, maybe you're a young fucking chef and you want to push ahead, great. Okay, maybe you're going to have to endure a bit of that, unfortunately. But You get to a point where it's like, are you benefiting from being there in the first place? No. Don't listen to fucking shit from people, because you got to understand that a real leader is someone who listens to you. A real leader will respect your opinion, and a real leader will try and communicate with you in a way that not only keeps you on side, but gets you to fucking get your job done as best you can, and as, you know what I mean, in the best way you can, because they're responsible. And I think within this industry, and this is going back to lifestyle shit, and it's going back to how people are treating the hours that chefs do and whatever the fuck, that people end up in shit places, you know, and they feel terrible about themselves. And every time someone launches a tirade, or any time someone launches an attack or wants to fucking take you down a peg, usually it's projection of themselves. Usually it's projection of how they feel about themselves. You know, I get it all the fucking time. And not just, this isn't just bosses, this is chefs in general. I get, you know, amazing conversations, amazing clients, amazing fucking shit happening within ChefFit, within the tribe. But I also see fucking look at comment sections that I get sometimes. And, you know, at the start of ChefFit, I would have probably taken this stuff as a slight. And now I've kind of learned to just fucking water off a duck's back and delete it, because I see the shit that people say to me, and none of it is true. Do you know what I mean? None of it is true, and you just get a ream of abuse. There was a lad I spotted that posted up a video, shared a video of ours, and he basically said, "How cringy is this?" And it was a video about mental health, and it was a fucking, you know, it was a pretty in-depth video. And if you don't like me personally, like, whatever, that's your opinion. But, you know, to share a video that's trying to help people who are struggling in an industry that needs people to be helped, you know, if you want to, and I just said, I left a comment kind of going, okay, well, listen, man, like, there's a lot of fucking problems within this industry. So why pick and nitpick at or take the piss out of something that's actually trying to help? You know, and all I got back was, you're a piece of shit cunt. You know, I'd kill you if I saw you. You're a snake oil salesman. You're exploiting weak chefs for anxiety and depression. People don't need your fucking product to fix the problem. Like, all of this shit. And for a second, I was like, clench my fists. If I found this lad, I would fucking brutalize him. I would fucking kill him. And then you kind of think to yourself, actually, you know, look at what the person's saying. Look at how spiteful they are to someone who they've never even met. And I'm like, that lad is that. I know that my comment back to him was kind of like something along the lines of, I hope you feel better after that. And I hope you find the help that you need, because you clearly need it. Do you know what I mean?
Not your address, though.
No, but I would fuck, because he lives in it. I'd fucking happily. One of these days, I'll meet a troll in the streets. Maybe it'll be in Dublin, maybe it'll be somewhere, and I will fucking flatline them. I'm a bit of a dickhead that way. Like, I'm kind of medieval in that way. If you talk shit, you fucking better be able to back something that up in person. If you were going to talk shit,
they challenge you to a duel, they better challenge you.
Fact, I'm a bit fucking primordial in that way, but I believe in that, because I know myself, right? I know the reason I say that. If you talk shit to me, right, online, you better be willing to say it to my face, and you better be willing to fucking fight for it, because I know in my own heart of hearts how I operate as a person, and I would never fucking jump in a comment section and try and rip someone apart who I don't know. That's why social media is a fucking joke, because weak pieces of shit get a platform to go and abuse people and project how they feel and how shit their life is on other people. But it's like, if you can't say that to someone else, you shouldn't be fucking saying it. And you got to understand that words have meaning. So kind of getting back to what I'm saying is, when someone is acting out like that and they're fucking raging and they're getting angry and they're abusing you, or they're fucking, you know, as you said with that lad who starts screaming and shouting at people, it's usually a projection of how shit they feel about themselves. And the reality is, if you can't help that person change, or it's not your responsibility to help that person change, and you're receiving abuse based on how they feel about themselves, get out of there, especially if you're not benefiting from it in any way, shape or form. Do you get me? So, like, even if it is financial, I don't like any amount of money. Is any amount of money worth getting fucking abused for? Like, if you're making me a millionaire, maybe, but you know, I think you get to a certain point as you get older, your tolerance for shit goes way down. And I think that's probably a good thing. You can't fucking live your life on your knees. You know, no one should be able to get away with saying shit like that to you. And ultimately sacrificing for people like that. You know yourself, there's a lot of ego There's a lot of ego, and there's a lot of great people within the industry. There's a lot of really good chefs, a lot of great leaders and people who bring their fucking teams up and fucking help and are very benevolent in that way. There's also a lot of ego. And that lad who I was talking about, who made his chef, he's made a massive change and gives them the expired ingredients to make a fucking cake. That is ego. That is ego 101. All right. That's like fucking, that lad is so, he's a fat fuck who basically isn't happy about himself and isn't happy when he sees his other chefs who work for him trying to be healthy, because it reminds him of how unhealthy he fucking is. So he tries to bring them down to the level. You've got to be able to identify you sacrificing for people like that. Fuck me, lads. And this is the next part of it. Like as Peter said, toxic bosses, the reason that they're abusive and all of that is because ultimately they probably abuse themselves and they feel shit about themselves and they want to bring you down a peg. Or it's the ego. And it's like they want to make it about them. And as soon as something damages their ego in some way, shape or form, as in triggers an insecurity in them, they'll try and fucking shut it down. And if you work for someone like that and you're not fucking getting paid millions, which nobody is, and you're not fucking a young chef in their first year who's learning shitloads, who's probably going to get out of there within a couple of months, you need to get the fuck out. You need to get the fuck out and get out of there. And stop thinking that you have to be loyal. Stop thinking that you have to be fucking... Loyalty is definitely a massive thing for me, okay? But I know for the people that are loyal to me, I am loyal to them. There has to be a reciprocal relationship. You know, I've known Peter for fucking 2.5 years. I know how fucking loyal Peter is to Chef Fit and me, but I also know how loyal I am to Peter if he ever fucking needed anything. Like, that's how it works. It's a two-way fucking street. You know, and I mean that. And maybe things, you know, when I would consider my circle of friends and family very small, you know, and a lot of people, oh, I have friends and this and that. I have 2 best mates, right? I have a lot of friends, but I have 2 best mates. And I know if anything ever fucking happened, I could call those people and, you know, they would help me. And likewise for them. And I take that very fucking seriously. And loyalty has to work both ways. You can't just expect to receive loyalty from people if you're not willing to fucking help them or do something for them in any way, shape or form. It's not that you're getting called on to do it all the time, but you have to be willing to. And if you find yourself extremely loyal to someone who doesn't give a fuck about you, in reality, the facts show they don't care about you. Like, you got to identify that. You got to get out. You know, you got to get out. And ultimately, this leads me on to the next point, which is sacrifice. Think about how much time you sacrificed, Peter. You know, and think about and I understand the mentality that you've gotten to now, where it's like, well, actually, I'm not going to let work take anything from my life anymore because you did it for so many years. Yeah. And ultimately, especially when you're working for other people, right? Especially when you're working for other people and you're still expected to sacrifice everything for them. And at the end of the day, what are you getting from that? Not really getting much. You know, you're not really getting much. And that's something that a lot of people need to bear in mind. It's like, you either want it all for yourself and you're willing to sacrifice for yourself, or you need to find a solid balance for yourself. But you can't sacrifice for someone else's benefit when you don't receive anything. Whether it be financial, whatever the fuck, whatever it is, okay? So stupid sacrifice. So what's stupid sacrifice? Well, a stupid sacrifice, in my opinion, is that you're doing 80 hours a week. You're probably getting paid for 40 hours to 50 hours, okay? If you're lucky, you're getting paid for 50 hours. That's how fucked up some situations can be. You're usually expected to cover people on a day off because they're short-staffed, which is a bullshit excuse of someone who can't run a fucking business properly, that they'll blame their fucking lack of business acumen and make you cover the ground for them because they're running on such tight margins, again, because they're not really clear or good at what they do. And ultimately you end up in a place where you have a really shit, unhealthy lifestyle with no balance off the back of that sacrifice. You know what I mean? And that was me 5 years ago in that place, my brother's place. And it's like, the only reason I was staying there because it was my brother's place. But as soon as it went fucking tits up, it's like, fuck me. I was sacrificing everything for nothing. For nothing, you know? And that's a hiding to nothing, because that leads to resentment, that leads to depression, that leads to fucking anxiety. And ultimately that will lead you to a point where it's like, fuck this, I'm walking away completely from the industry. Or just fuck this, can't take it anymore. You got to know who are you killing yourself for? You got to know that. And if you're killing yourself for someone else, you're leading yourself down a very, very slippery slope. For me,
go
ahead.
Sorry, one of the when I was getting some prep done for this episode, the first thing I wrote down was do not work one free hour. Whether you're new or old, or you just starting in a place, or if you're a veteran, that's one of the bare minimum standards that I hold myself to since I left the restaurant industry. And I should have done it before that, obviously. But hindsight is great. But don't work a single free hour. When you say that to chefs now, you say, how many hours did you work last week? 52. How many did you get paid for? 37 and a half. How common is that? And they don't bat an eyelid at it.
Yeah.
Salary in a chef job is ridiculous. Yeah. If it's something that's so flexible like that, then you can't work for a salary. I don't work for a salary. All the other people that are in my level within the company that I work for are on a salary. And it was the reason why I didn't join the job that I'm in now. Yeah. When I was there with an agency for over a year. Mm-hmm. And then when they came to my terms of giving me a good early rate instead, then I said, okay, yeah, no problem. Mm-hmm. And then I knew that there wouldn't be any of that shit going on then, because if they do, if I'm there for 8 minutes, I'll sign out for I'll sign for them 8 minutes, and I won't give one single penny of overtime. I won't give it. And even now, still, there are people that will work 50, 60, 70 hours and get paid their basic salary, or even they're on an hourly, but they only get paid for the 40. It's like, yeah, well, then you should have played and finished up. Blah, blah, blah. Like, you hear that even in the day jobs, the 7 to 3 jobs. If you were there until 3:30 or 4 o'clock because you're cleaning down because it was busy, you say, yeah, well,
it's your fault.
Shouldn't be out here at 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's your fault.
Exactly. And I think you have to get to a certain point of shrewdness. I think so many chefs maybe lack that. Like, negotiation is a skill. You know what I mean? And if you're an agreeable person, you know what I mean? If you're a nice, agreeable person, generally you're going to get taken advantage of, because it's in your nature not to question. It's in your nature not to go, fuck, that's not good enough. Like, you get to a point over many years maybe that you're like, okay, well, actually, I'm not going to have the fucking piss ripped out of me, and I am going to get paid for the shit that I'm working. And it's like, those extra hours that you're talking about, they don't benefit you, they benefit someone else,
That's it.
And again, it totally goes back to that fucking, that sacrifice thing. I had a really good point there and it's fucking popped out of my mind, but we'll keep it rolling because it'll come back to me now in a moment. But
my fault. Apologies.
That's all G. Like, again, in places that you work, if you're expected to work more, okay, well, is that the way it is? You know what I mean? Are you expected to just do those extra hours and not get paid for it? I think a lot of employers kind of get away with what they're allowed to get away with. Do you know what I mean? They're getting away with what they're allowed to get away with. And I think a good, hard conversation goes a fucking long way if you're willing to have it with someone. You know what I mean? If you're a valuable team member and you sit someone down and you feel that you're genuinely being, taken for a mug, for lack of a better term, like saying that that's just the way it is and, like, I'm just fucking expected to do 60 hours and fucking whatever. But if you ever sat that person down and explained the problem and why it's a problem, you know what I mean? And just literally don't use your feelings, use fucking facts. In my contract, it says this. I am being paid for this. That, in my opinion, is not what this is about. I'm not willing to do that. Can we come to a fucking, you know what I mean? Can we come to a reconciliation here? Can I get paid for what I'm fucking doing? And if the answer is no, in my opinion, just based on principle alone, I don't think you should be working in a place that's not willing to pay you for what you're working. You know what I mean?
Know your worth. That's another massive thing as well.
Yeah, know your worth, and don't be willing to, especially your experience. And there's such a range with chefs, and it's, people who've fucking 15 years experience, like, you're good at what you do. You deserve to get paid for it. And you definitely don't deserve to be fucking doing shit for free. I don't know what happened in the industry that became a thing. I don't know why in hospitality. It's like, I try and suss it out in my mind to why these things happen. But I honestly feel that I don't blame everything on employers, because there's still everyone has responsibility. But what I think is employers kind of get away with things because that's kind of the way it's always been done. Whereas the reality is the way it's always been done is, you know, it's based off in the Escoffier system. It's a fucking French chef from the 1800s who invented the way the kitchens are kind of run.
Service.
That brigade fucking mentality. The idea of a brigade is you can't question up the chain of command. You know, that's the same thing in the army. You don't question your fucking commanding officer. That's just generally how the rules work. Kitchen, like, there's always hierarchies, but the hierarchies that kind of exist in a lot of kitchens are in a way that, you know, if you're a young person, you can be easily taken advantage of because you're just like, you just should have put your head down because that's what you're supposed to do. And I think that's why we end up with a lot of these shitty situations. And I think unless you understand that it's a systemic problem, it's never going to fix itself overall. But regardless of that, you know, if you can't change that as an individual, all you've got to do is look at your own situation and go, is this fucking good enough? Yes or no? Like, and be willing to have that conversation, or be willing to walk if they're not having the conversation, you know, but be willing to make a fucking stand, be willing to do the right thing. Don't be loyal to someone for no reason at all, you know? So unnecessary sacrifice, like, don't do it. Like, move yourself in a different direction. The point I was saying earlier on with myself and Chefit, I spent so many years working for other people and fucking doing shit for other people and just enduring bullshit and being, you know, not making any money and not doing anything. And like, I'm just about making a living with Chefit, but regardless, it's like I've been able, since I got to a point where it's like, I don't like working for other people, I'm going to start working for myself. I've always had that mindset. It's like, at least the sacrifices that I put in to Chefit to get it to this point, like, at least those things were in my favor, and at least it was building something that I was passionate about. But like, I've put just as much sacrifice as I did to put into Chefit, but I've put it into other people's fucking businesses. You know what I mean? And like, how did that benefit me? Not in the slightest. You know? So yes, building a skill set is important and learning is important, but you have to get to a certain point where if you're going to sacrifice, it has to be in your favor. And if you're not going to sacrifice, make sure that you're getting paid for what you're doing, you know? And I suppose that's that point taken care of. The last thing really, guys, is bad work environments. I mean, not work environments as in your boss, but the people you work with. You got to be able to look at, like, a bad work environment or toxic colleagues. Generally, as I said, the bottleneck is at the top. So you might be in a place that is inherently toxic, okay? And that stems from the top down. But even if you find yourself with the chefs that you're working with and you're just surrounded by this negativity and this complaining and this moany attitude, that's not a good thing either. That's not a good thing either, because gossip is one of those things. Everyone knows a fucking gossip, but when it's every day, when it's a constant just moaning barrage of bullshit and complaining. Remember Al Sperrin, one of the lads who was in Chefit, you know, and he was telling me about that one day. He was going into work in this place in town, and he had to step out because he was about to punch a hole in the wall. There's a guy who's very positive, who's made a massive change, and then he's going into work, and all he's hearing is just bitching and moaning, and how bad is this place to work, and how bad is this, and how bad is that. Negative all the fucking time. And what you really got to understand as a person is your consumption, right? What you consume in terms of media, in terms of conversation, interactions with other people, that has a massive effect on you, you know, and you have to be aware of your consumption. You have to control your consumption. For example, if I just fucking open my phone and I just look at headlines, there was a headline that Ella showed me when the second lockdown happened here in Melbourne. And it's like they locked down for the second time. And it was a picture, the article from the news place it's a picture of a person in a hazmat suit. And it says 6-week death sentence. That was the headline. 6-week death sentence, and a picture of a person in a hazmat suit. That was to announce the second lockdown because 2 people had died in Melbourne of coronavirus. Or sorry, in Victoria, which is the whole state, which is about fucking whatever, multiple times the size of Ireland. Do you know what I mean? And it's like 6-week death sentence, person in a hazmat suit. And I kind of think, I saw that headline, and as we were going to the shop, I could visibly see people back in panic mode. I could visibly see people doing stupid shit again, buying fucking toilet roll. Even the shops are, you can only buy 1 tin of beans now. You fucking buy any more than 1 tin of beans. That kind of bullshit. And that all stems from consumption. That all stems from you're consuming bullshit information, and therefore that's affecting you. So like, when you walk into work and all you hear is complaining and negativity, it rubs off you in the same way that shitty news influences morons. Okay? It's the same thing. And when you're around people, you're some of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You've got to really identify that and try your best to nip it in the bud and call people on their shit. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes people just need that. Some people can be gossiping and talking shit. Maybe they just need to be told you're talking shit. And you have a choice in your life, and you could make your situation better, but you're definitely making it worse by complaining. That's a call out. That's trying to nip it in the bud. But if that doesn't do the job and it just keeps happening over and over and over again, that's another reason for you to look at your situation and go, actually, should I be fucking here? Yes or no? Because it'll kill you. It'll kill you. I've done it before. It's not worth it. The level of stress, the level of anxiety, and the level of anger and resentment that stems from places like that will fuck you up. It will fuck you up. You know what I mean? And especially if you're trying to make lifestyle changes, especially if you're trying to make positive changes in your life. And this is rounding off the podcast. If you're trying to make positive changes in your life and you are in a negative environment, you're not going to be able to sustain that positive change. If you bring a salad and a fucking prep meal into a kitchen that's full of negative assholes, they're going to laugh at you. They're going to laugh at, what are you fucking eating that for? What are you fucking doing that for? You know what I mean? Going to the gym and you're split. Fucking, you'd be tired for service after that. You know what I mean? That kind of bollocks. And it's like, a banter is fine. Bit of crack is fine. But when it's not really crack, it's just being a dick. Like, that will stop you. That will become an obstacle for you. And when I looked at how we build ShefFit, the reason that the tribe works in such a way is because it's a positive environment, and there isn't necessarily, if there is a dickhead who arrives, and maybe you can't fucking, you can't predict how people are going to act a lot of times, but if someone's a dickhead for long enough, they're gone, you know what I mean? And they don't get away with it, and eventually they're going to be out. And we try and keep it positive, and ultimately it's the idea that you're now with other chefs who share the same pain, share the same background, but they're also in a place where they're fucking pushing to behold a higher standard, keeping it positive, and they're trying to change their lives. And that creates a very, very, very positive positive environment to take action. That becomes an environment where you're almost given permission and told that you should be taking care of yourself. You should be healthier. You should make positive decisions. You should have a positive mindset. And when you see other chefs do it, it gives you the permission to do the same, and ultimately it rubs off you in that way. And that's what I've seen happen to chefs who go from being in a bad place to changing their life. And that environment is everything to do with getting them there. Do you know what I mean? It's everything to do with getting them there. Without that environment, they probably would have listened to the dickheads and work.
Your headspace is a sponge from your environment.
Exactly. We're the culmination of all that shit. All the experience in our life, all the things we consume on a daily basis, that becomes us. So you got to manage your consumption. You got to manage your consumption. And
if you ever find yourself saying, the head chef, he's a brilliant chef, but he's an abusive dickhead, then he's not a brilliant chef. He's just an abusive dickhead. Yeah. And the sooner you notice that, the better.
Fact. Absolute fact. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't agree with that any fucking more. Like, it's not skill.
There's absolutely no reason to take that shit. Would you fuck off?
You find skills fucking anywhere, man. Do you know what I mean? But there's no excuse for abuse. Leadership is a fucking choice. It's not given to anyone. So people can be put in those roles and they're not leaders. And that can fuck with you. And I think your main thing to understand is that a good environment can actually lead you to make some serious positive changes in your life, and a bad one will stifle you and set you back. So what I want you to take from this, whether it's your boss, whether it's the people you work with, whether it's the place you work, whatever the fuck you're in, or whether it's just you're sacrificing and not getting paid for it, or you're not benefiting from it, you got to be able to identify when it's not a good situation, it's not a good environment, chef. And from there, you've got to have the courage to put your foot down and say, listen, either have a hard conversation and try and come to an agreement that works for you. And if that's not the case, then it's like, you got to fucking be willing to step outside and see if there's something else on the table for you. But another person's business isn't worth your life, in my opinion. It's not worth your life. Best believe it. Word is born. Avoid toxicity at all costs. Absolutely avoid it at all costs. If you enjoyed this, check that out for a fucking, diddle-diddle-doo. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you leave us a review on iTunes, a 5-star bad boy. And also, guys, please share this with any chefs that you feel might be in a negative place. Leeds in the Premiership. Come on. Yes. We are sponsored by Leeds United. Please like and subscribe to them on YouTube, and you'll there we go. Sweet as a nut. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. We will catch you in the next one. Don't accept toxicity, and I'll see you in church. Paddy, good shit, bro. Catch you in the funny papers. You better believe it.